Hi, everyone. As you know, today we will be studying Mercury through our Sabian symbol. So Mercury is our own personal messenger. He's describing how we learn and perceive, and then how we communicate to others our knowledge and perceptions of the world around us. In astrology, Mercury is associated with communication, with intellect, with reasoning, and mental agility. And it represents the way we think, process information, and express ourselves. So the main symbolisms of Mercury are communication, intellect and learning, adaptability and flexibility, travel and movement, merchants and commerce, curiosity and exploration, youthfulness and youthful energy, and sometimes even a trickster energy, manifesting as playfulness, mischief, and unpredictability. So without any further ado, I will let James dig deeper into Mercury and its depths. James, over to you.
Thank you. If we consider reality, the universe, without connectivity, then we have nothing. That which turns nothing but chaos into something, form, is Mercury, because it connects things. And if we pause just for a moment and think about how often when you're reading a birth chart, kind of trivialize Mercury a little bit. It's not the planet that we give a huge amount of attention to. Oh, the sun's here, the ascendant is more important than anything, blah, 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 blah. But without Mercury, nothing exists. It's really, really important. And if you think about your life when you don't get to talk to anyone at all, you're in solitary confinement, that's considered to be almost one of the worst punishments that there is. There's something about the human condition that requires connectedness with another human, or at least another living being. And people who haven't got a person living with them very often bring in an animal into the equation. So there is a communication in their daily life. And it's a sign of a fairly advanced spiritual being who can live alone within their own centeredness without particularly connecting with another person. But in that case, they connect with something which is not a person, spiritual presence. But the connectedness that we're studying here bridges the gap between entities. And if you think about entities as being dots and bridges as being lines, then you've got a network. Each of us is a position in the network of people, and every conversation we have, all of our aspects of relationship, creates from that series of many, many individuals something bigger than that, which is a network of individuals which comprises all of them and comes to something so very much bigger than the sum of the total. So we have synergy developing out of Mercury. And I think you're sometimes aware that when life offers up synchronicities, that synergy also occurs. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it has in my life, that there's this similarity when things are going right. I meet the right people at the right time and we all want to do the right thing and like, yeah, we get things done. All of that is like the exaltation of your Mercury energy. Now, there are times when that approach is just not how you want to structure your mind. And the mind, of course, is an exact example of mercurial production. All of these synapses moving around, they don't understand the messages that they're carrying any more than a postman knows the content of the letters that they're carrying, any more than Google gives a shit about what's in your email. It doesn't matter. Their functionality is simply to pass things from one place to another, movement of information. So that's what the nervous system does in our physical body. It doesn't try to understand what it's doing, it just passes electrical signals all around so that we've got this possibility of a passage and exchange of information. Now, as we exchange information, some of it sticks. So we have also the development of skills, as well as information, as well as learning. So we can develop from mercurial powers new knowledge, learning, on a practical level, skills. So even manual dexterity is mercurial. It's not only mind, it's also what you can do with your fingers and your feet, which comes from the mind. There's certain things that can go wrong with the brain that would disable that functionality. So it's an aspect of the brain's function, but nevertheless, it's different. So Mercury is not only the mind, it's also movement around and about, not only movement of thought, but also movement of physicality. And I formed the hypothesis a while ago that I would love to test whether there's a correlation between driving a car, your ability to do that, and your intelligence level. That would be a very interesting study to do, because the speed that you have to respond to a situation driving a car, it goes through the brain. It goes through the unconscious processes of the brain, also mercurial, and the conscious processes of the brain. Now, if you have a high level of intelligence, then you can process things in the conscious aspect of the brain more rapidly and in greater numbers. So you're approaching a scenario on the roads and you can see lots more information, understand its implications, and make a decision about that really quickly. So your ability to respond to demand for motor skills is linked to the ability you have to do the job of symbolizing. Making symbols is a really fundamental part of our experience of being humans at all. We can actually create symbols in written form, in spoken form. So if I give you a symbol now in the form of a word, elephant. One word gives you a different experience of life. Mercury does that because we have established the symbol system that gets you to think of a big animal that's gray in color with that sound, la, 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 elephant. And you think of this thing completely on the face of it, unrelated to this sound. Now, our work together as astrologers is entirely to do with symbol making and interpretation and speaking about our interpretations and everything. It's so very deeply mercurial. And what we have to do with that is to read information and translate it into meaning. So I've just seen a few people do this. Watch me. Watch me, please. You've just seen what I've done. What's all of that about? What I understand from that is somebody is listening to what I'm saying, interested, want to hold on to that information, and needs to adjust according to that. Now, I knew all of that just by looking at the person. Wow. That must be incredible to be able to do that, mustn't I? How could I possibly interpret this movement into what I've just said? Well, we all could. Every single one of us could. Without Mercury, it would simply be a physical movement in the distance. Do you know that if you do that, a person will look and a dog will not? The dog doesn't care that you're pointing to something. That does not mean over there to a dog. Nor does that mean stop doing it, dog. Or, we've created this whole symbol system by which we can bring sensory experience into meaning. And without a symbol system, you can't give meaning to anything. Meaning is the translation of one bit of data, which might be sensory, it might be symbolic, into another. That's Mercury. So translation is Mercury, therefore languages, of course. Now we can also bring in intelligence at this point. Whatever intelligence is, and not very many people can define that to anyone else's satisfaction. We've all got a very different sense of what intelligence is. And that which is measured by an IQ test is an incredibly accurate measurement of the intelligence of people that like IQ tests. I don't know if it's more than that, really. When I'm talking to people with high IQs, very often I'm bored, very often indeed. And the word intelligence means something different to different people. But the kind of intelligence that can do IQ tests is very Mercurial indeed. Translating a symbol into meaning and inferring from that further symbols or further meaning. So the extrapolation principle, imagining what must be out of a series of logical inferences. Now, we're basing all of our sense of reality on logical inferences. And various systems exist for doing that. If you're a scientific materialist, you will know as a fact, and you will not discuss it, that everything in reality is measurable. That's your faith. And if you're a religionist, it will be something like, but it was like that. It was said in the Bible, but the Quran has it. You can't discuss whether it's true or not. It's written in the Quran, So you've got a foundation principle upon which you base inferences and therefore work out what reality means. Notwithstanding the fact that you're just in the face of something which refutes it completely. I've been in situations where I've experienced something and somebody said, well, that can't be real. Because their theory and their foundation axioms just don't allow for that experience. But there it is. We've got that ability to create our sense of reality out of mercurial processes, notwithstanding the evidence. All of the evidence points to the existence of something going on in astrology. I've looked into this deeply. There is supportive data that proves that astrology is not nonsense. And the people that would not have that, they won't look at this data. So Mercury gives us this kind of version of reality. It's subject to interpretation. And we have this idea now of the way in which we internalize perception. If we externalize our perception, we can create a symbol system that we can communicate and swap without the outer world. So we can talk to people about something because of the language. That's one symbolic system of Mercury. But if we internalize that process, then we internalize it as perception. So if somebody who has just come out of the shower is all hot and sweaty, and they put their hand in a certain bowl of water, they might find that cooling. Or somebody's just coming from a different place, they put their hand in the water and they find that warming. It's the same temperature water, you know, but we're perceiving it differently because of our own inner state. Now, that's just the same is true of concepts as well. I'm still really, really grateful that I'm a very young person. And that's because I can imagine, what are you doing smiling? Because I'm able to imagine that when I finish my work, I'm going to be old. And now I'm not. I'm young now because I've got a lot more to do. But you guys don't understand how young I am. You perceive this altogether differently. That ability to rewrite the code of your life is a gift of Mercury. So if you've got a really clear Mercury, not strong, I'm not using the word strong now, clear. It's clear of emotion. For example, I got a very close friend locally who's super bright. He's amazing. His powers of analysis is unrivaled in my life experience. And yet he has the moon in Scorpio. And when he's off on one of his moon in Scorpio trips, he can't think straight. He just cannot think in a straight line. He says stupid things, makes stupid decisions. I speak to my friend really strongly. His Mercury and mine are exactly in the same position. So he tries to bully me with clear-minded analysis, and I bully him back with refutation. So we have this Mercurial fight. And I say, you're emotional. You can't think straight. And he said, I'm not emotional. How dare you say I'm emotional? I'm not having that. That isn't Mercury, is it? That's the moon in Scorpio. So when you see somebody talking with hyperbole and exaggeration and selling, charm, you know, glamour, all of that stuff, that isn't really Mercury, is it? Within that, underneath that, Mercury is there trying to connect with another. But when it's very emotional, and that's what I'm talking about with the moon in Scorpio, very emotional, then that clarity of Mercury is lost. But when you have a clear Mercury, you can work things out. You can perceive what is and not make inventions about what you think is, what might be there. You'll look for data. And of course, any data operating process, any data storage, any data communication at all is Mercury. Now, the higher order of Mercury can be said to be the translation function moving into the world where you can translate from one system of knowledge or experience to another. It's a very high level Mercurial function. Let me give you an example when you're trying to express an idea as a poem. Now, the poem itself may well be Venus-like. Often poems are beautiful, but the fact that you're trying to communicate, it's the data almost, and the data is, I feel like this. It's not the feeling that you have, but it's the report. Like if I say to you, I feel very relaxed at the moment, you know, it's not that I'm relaxed when I'm saying it, because clearly I'm quite highly charged at the moment. But you know, if I say I'm very relaxed at the moment, then I'm talking about a feeling. Whether talking about it is Mercury. So we have to distinguish between when Mercury carries emotion, legitimately is being Mercurial. Whereas if it's being emotional, as it's trying to carry data, that's not Mercury, not really. Can you see the difference there? Now, we will find that the attitude with which we have to interact with other people has a lot to do with our Mercury placement, and that's what we're studying today. On the elemental level, is it at all surprising to you that I've got Mercury in a fire sign? Look at what I'm doing with my hands. I want you to understand what I mean. And if you don't, I'll raise my voice. And if you actually, I'm bullying you into understanding me. So you're not going to be like that with the Mercury and Pisces. Are we talking about Pisces? You wouldn't be like that with Mercury and Pisces, would you then? Whereas Mercury and Scorpio would just be looking at you, pausing for an uncomfortably long period of time, nodding, and then saying no. Mercury Sagittarius would be on to the next sentence before you've understood what they've said. I just had a conversation with a Mercury and Sagittarius person this morning. Oh my God. I'm still tired from it. He's giving me 20 concepts per minute. I can't keep up with him, you know. So our mercurial attitude will be very strongly influenced by things like the fire signs and the earth sign, sorry, the elements and the mutability, fixed signs or cardinal signs of our Mercury. We have to think about that. But what we're studying today is the deeper level. The Sabian symbols will start to give you a hint, a clue, a pointer towards something which is an even higher representation of Mercury. And it starts the Bible off. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word is the Logos, God's mind, basically. You know, think about that, the mind of God. That's also Mercury. Like, wow, he must be quite clever to have done all this. That level of genius is beyond our comprehension. What we've learned recently through the existence of the internet has a lot to do with Mercury. If you look at the internet, you'll see quite a lot of what your Mercury's like, because your internet and my internet are not the same. You know, we've all shaped our experience of being online by ourselves, you know, for our own purposes. So what you look at when you open your computer up is part of your Mercury, isn't it? You know, if you go up one stage from that, you get into this realm of thought, which is called the astral plane in Sufism, where all thought has life. So when we have a thought, it doesn't die as soon as we stop engaging with it. It lives on in the astral plane, so it is taught. And the length of time that it endures there depends upon two things. And that's true of communications with people as well. If you get these two things sorted out right, it will express as longevity of thought. And those two things are the sharpness of the thought, how particularly clear it is, how exact the thought is, and the passion with which you think it. So if I was speaking to somebody today and I said, which of those two documentary types do you like? Well, the political, I think. The political. And I said, not the journalistic. He said, oh, it could be the journalistic. It could be, yeah, it could be the journalistic. You might be right there. Now, that thought is going to last about 5 seconds in the astral plane, because even he can't be bothered to identify with it. But when I say something, I intend to do that, it will take 7 years for that to be the case. I want it to be exactly like that. I'm going to get everyone who knows me to know that that's what I'm doing with my life. That thought is going to live on in the astral plane and therefore in your life experiences. So when you communicate with somebody in a fluffy way, they won't take any notice of it. But if you say really clearly, this is the case, I mean it, then that will make a difference. So that's something to take into account when we're discussing our Mercuries. Another little factor, just to finish, it has a lot to do with differentiation. This is not that. It's a really important part of our life experience to differentiate between this and that. Without that differentiation, you can't have identity, you can't have value, you can't have meaning. And Mercury gives us all of that. And therefore, Mercury gives us decision. So how we make decisions is quite a lot to do with our Mercury. Now, all of these words are just helpful clues. Mostly these words have other factors. So a decision might also be based on your values sometimes, or coercion other times. And therefore you'd have Venus involved or Pluto, so that would muddy the water. But essentially, when you make a decision, it is looking between whether the synapses in your head want to go this way or that way. That's what a decision is. Synapses make the brain work. It's mercurial. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, James. What are the questions that you'd like us to explore in the breakout rooms?
What do you talk about given free choice? So you can start the conversation on anything you want. What's your preference? Secondly, how do you connect with another on first acquaintance? How do you connect with another on first acquaintance? And thirdly, just discuss generally what you can communicate and how you communicate.